So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session, 4th November for TDS. The main items for today will be surrounding week 5 content and any doubts or issues that you may have so far with regards to the course. Um, I've also have Jivraj, the other TA, on this call as well. So, in case you had any issues with project, then the both of us will be able to clarify any questions you may have about it. Um, so, do you guys have any clarifications you require on anything before I start? Okay. Have all of you been able to get your API token for being able to use the LLMs? Okay, who has not?
Actually, I haven't tried that. I did not visit that page.
Okay. If there would have been an email sent, I've pinned the message in the message box. It has that
Yeah, yeah.
subject on there that you'll have to search in your email. And then if you access the link for the AI proxy, then you will be able to get your token. So every student has been given a certain allowance. And so that's for you to use and experiment and try. I mean, of course, you could buy your own tokens as well, but if it's something given for free, then you might as well use it, right? So that's about that. The next thing, okay, yeah. So let me share my screen. Okay, and uh, hope you can see this. So this is the basically the place where you'll get the documentation about the API that we'll be using today. And so you can, this is the main thing to remember is these URLs is what you'll have to use. And effectively what it is, it's a proxy for um, OpenAI's keys. It goes through Anand's server and then you're able to do whatever you require to do through this proxy. And so there are some, if you scroll down here, you'll see there you can do some GET requests and it tells you uh, what kind of models are available. Uh, this will be useful in your GA5. There are some post requests that you can send. Again, this will be all useful things that you will need. And so it also tells you what what these requests will send you back. So in addition to the um, responses from the LLM, you'll also get some additional headers, which tells you what the cost of the request you sent was, what the monthly cost will be, and all these details will come back through the header response. You would have seen something, I mean, you wouldn't have seen these headers, but you would have seen a similar thing happening with your GitHub API where it'll send you back some headers and it'll have, for example, the rate limits and things of that sort, right? So it's something similar to that. You make a call to the API and it sends you back. In addition to the data you requested, it will send you back some additional useful information. So as you can see here, they've given you a monthly limit of 50 cents. It doesn't sound like a lot. In fact, last term it was set at $1, and virtually hardly any of it was used up by students. Um, and you'll see in a little bit why that is. Have you all gone through the lectures at all for week 5?
Yes, I have gone through two lectures, but not
Okay.
fully.
Have you tried anything in those lectures?
No, so just now I got to know that the APIs were sent via mail, so I have not tried anything.
Okay. Thanks, Jayprakash. Anyone else? Anyone else has tried the things in the lectures?
Nothing. I haven't gone through the content in your
Okay,
office.
okay. So what I'll do is start at the very beginning. So all of you are very familiar with, of course, LLMs, right? Chat GPT and the other similar types of GPTs. Um, and they are not magic boxes. Okay, effectively, what they are uh, is some sort of statistical modeling is happening in the background. Some mathematical transformation is occurring in the background. So whenever you send type words in a sentence and send it to the machine that is receiving your request, what it does is there's a model in there, and that model looks at each of your requests and looks at the words and breaks them down into some tokens. And then these tokens are represented by some vectors which have certain weights to them. And then the way it decides what to respond back has to do with the relationships of these tokens with each other. So that's what LLMs generally are. They're sort of predictive text mappings that use some vectors which have very huge dimensions. Usually something like 1,500 features will be there for each token that you have. It depends on the model. Some will have less vectors, less features. Some will have more features, um, and so that's what these um, mathematical statistical models in the background are doing. So that's why you need huge computational power because they're very very large matrices, and they're just doing matrix transformations in the background. And the parameters you might have heard or read, they'll have so many billion parameters that has been trained on. But effectively, they're just giant matrices making all these operations. So that's what LLMs typically are. Now, what I want to show you is the precursor to these sort of models that are very popular nowadays. So I want to show you a basic demonstration of what we used to do before uh, term 2 of this year, okay? Because that will give you an idea of where we are heading. And if I go to, okay, actually, what I could do is I will just create a new one. Mm, okay. So how many of you know what sentiment is? Do you guys know what sentiment is? Okay, Jay Prakash, would you like to explain to us what, in your own words, what you think sentiment is?
Yes, sir. I'll just tell you what I have seen in those lectures only. But uh, beyond that, I don't have any knowledge of this. Like whatever we can call it as unstructured data, right? Whatever we are speaking, whatever our emotions are, those are called like sentiments.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, this is what I know.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So, yeah, so sentiment is so every sentence that you can that in a that can be expressed in a language can be thought of having some sort of sentiment. It can be positive, it can be negative, um, and so or it could be neutral, right? So, and the question is, how do you evaluate a sentiment of a sentence? And more importantly, why do you even care whether a sentence has a positive sentiment, a negative sentiment, or a neutral sentiment? So, can anyone tell me why would that be useful to know the sentiment of a sentence? Can someone tell me a use case that might be?
For
Based on
example, okay. For example, if you are giving a Google, you are going through your Google reviews. You have a you have any firm or something, and you are going to your Google reviews, you can just figure out which are the positive, which are the negative, and which are the neutral ones.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So reviews would be a good example. Yeah. So where you're looking for positive reviews, negative reviews. I mean, you can think of, for example, the election cycle that's going on in the US, for example. If you're running for a particular seat, it'd be good to know on social media, for example, um, how it's trending, right? The latest thing that you're um, talked about, the issues that you're discussing, are people reacting positively to it? Are they reacting negatively to it? How can you calibrate your campaign? Same way with uh, advertising or marketing or any of these things, right? So sentiment is a hugely important field for these reasons, right? So what I'll show you is a sort of precursor to the LLMs that we used to use before, and something. It's a library called TextBlob, and the reason I'm showing you this is now, of course, nowadays you can use LLMs to do this, but you have to pay for um, um, using tokens and things of that sort, right? And sometimes you just want something that's fast and can do the job for you very easily. So there was this library called TextBlob, and what I'll do is I'll pull up the. Let's see, let's do this here. If I say TextBlob, so installing it. So this is what we want. Install. Is it? Here, right. Sorry, it's at the very top. So we'll need this, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pip install that. Is that better in visibility?
Yes.
Okay. So we got text blob. Um, and then the next thing we need is, I think, just to say import text blob. Yeah, from text blob import text blob. So that's what we'll do. From text blob import text blob. Okay, and then we'll put a sentence here. Okay, so can anyone give me a sentence you want to try out? So let's see. We've got, who do we have here? So we've got. Okay, Anu, would you like to give us a sentence to that you want to check the sentiment for?
I like football.
So I like football. Okay, and the next thing we'll do is we will uh, use this to find out the sentiment of the sentence. Okay, and the way we do that is we just simply say, let's say score or something, and we'll say text blob, and put the sentence in there. Sentence. Okay. And then let's see what score has. Okay, and then we want the sentiment of it. That's interesting. So that says 0 and 0. Not sure why that is. The polarity and subjectivity both are 0. Okay. So that didn't quite seem to work out that well. So there are two key factors here. So if you look at sentiment, there's polarity and there's subjectivity. Can anyone venture a guess as to what subjectivity means and what polarity means?
Subjectivity is that it depends upon the person. That it can be right for you, but it must be wrong for me. Like we can't
Correct.
decide whether it's right or wrong. It can go
Yes.
both ways.
Right. So a sentence like "I like football," um, it's subjective, I would say, right? Depends on the person.
Yes,
Yeah. So let's try a different sentence. Can someone suggest me another sentence?
I hate football.
Okay. I think we'll end up with probably the same score. We'll see. Ah, that's interesting. So now it has changed, and it says the subjectivity is 0.9. Okay, and the polarity is negative 0.8. So the range. So this brings us to the next interesting question: what is the range of polarity, and what is the range of subjectivity? So polarity goes all the way from -1 to +1. So it's a bit like correlation, except polarity will tell us whether something is positive or negative. But as was rightly pointed out, subjectivity tells whether something is subjective or not. Right? And in this case, it seems to say, and this also ranges from 0 to 1 rather than -1 to positive. So this is saying this is highly subjective. I hate football. I don't know why I didn't think I like football was subjective or not, but it says okay, this is a very subjective thing, and it's showing that it's fairly negative sentence to say. Okay, let's try one more sentence. Yeah. Okay. Anyone wants to give me another sentence to try?
I have put something in chat with mixed emotions. Maybe you can try that.
Okay. What was that? Sorry, I have
Sorry,
mixed.
could you try this is laptop?
This is laptop. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Interesting. So 0 and 0. So it's not subject. So it's saying there is. Um, it's a very objective sort of statement, right? This is a laptop, and the polarity is 0. It's not negative. It's not positive. It's just a statement of fact, right? Now, you might have noticed, right? This is not perfect. Okay, this this scoring system, but what it does do is it gives you a fairly good idea of um what how subjective something is and how much negative or positive sentiment there is with regards to it. So this is something I want you to keep in mind with regards to sentiment. And why is text block used? So you've seen it's not 100% accurate all the time, but why is this important? What makes text block useful even in the age of LLM? It's very fast. That's the first thing. Okay, it requires very little resources. You can run it on millions of lines of data without any issues, and it will give you a reasonably good idea of the data that you're looking at, right? So in that sense, this is still relevant even today, even in the age of LLMs. Okay, um, uh, the sunshine is rather. Let's see. So so now it's giving a positive one, and it's saying it's highly subjective. So that's interesting. I don't know how it comes up with these scores, but it just does, right? And if we say crime is very high, city, So here you can see a little bit of a mixed sort of view to it. I mean, for some interesting reason, it thinks this is a slightly positive, slightly um, positive from the neutral, and we may of course disagree, and it gives a reasonably high subjectivity score. So it's not perfect. This is what I am trying to point out, but it's useful. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is what we are really here for. How do LLMs improve on this? Okay, uh, and so the first thing is you will need that token, right, before you do anything else. So if I go, this is so there are some people, of course, who are not in this session. So for their benefit, I'll show this. So basically, what you do is you click on this sign in with Google at this address, and it'll give you a token. Now, the reason I am not going to click on this is because someone very entrepreneurial will probably freeze frame the YouTube video and possibly steal my token, right? So that's why I'm not going to click on this. Okay, but trust me, when I click on this, you will get a token. Okay, now I've saved my secret token in the environment, so we will use that. And let me. So the first thing is we'll need an API token or API key rather. It's equal to say get environment, oops, environment, and I've called it AI September token. You can call it whatever you want. And typically what happens is uh, you don't even have to do this, okay? You can just straight away just say API key equal to, and then just put your secret key over here, okay? Whatever it is, just copy paste it in there and in a variable so that you can use it whenever it's required. Just give me a second while I get this token. Copy. Just give me 2 seconds. And one more thing is, I will suggest is you can try along with me as well. Okay, you don't have to just be passive observers while we are doing this. Which folder is this? So elements, okay. Video. Right. Just paste it in here. Sorry, just give me a second. Okay. Just getting my key. Okay. Saying I'm not allowed to do something that's invisible. Okay. Right. So that's that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so in order to get it from the environment, I need another library, and it's called Python env. info. Oops. Okay, and we'll also need the requests. So requests. Okay, and then I can load this token from the environment. So from import, then load. So all this does is I've an environment file here, and it will load this environment variable called AI SCP token from this file, and it will load it into this running environment that we've got. So I run this, and then oh right. There's one more thing we needed to do. From OS import get environment. Okay, so that's the get environment function. Okay, so it loaded that token on there, so we have that ready. We need requests because we're going to make calls to the API, and then we need to make the request itself. So requests. So this should be very familiar to you all. Get, and so if we remember, we'll have to look at the API documentation. Let's get that now. Okay, and we want to use this endpoint. Okay, and also as part of the requests, we need not just the URL, but we also need the headers. And if we look at the documentation, we will have to give our API key. So our authorization is what we require. Oops. And okay, so that's the URL and the header with the token that we require. So we'll go ahead and run this and see what happens. Okay, so the first thing to do, of course, is whenever you're making requests, as usual with APIs, run them in a separate cell or be very careful with how you do them so that we can then debug it, the response later. So obviously the first thing I want to do is check, was it successful? And a 200 status code indicates that it is. It will give you, most APIs will give you a JSON response. So it's always useful to have the JSON library. And we'll look at, for example, the headers. Because if you remember, I said one of the things that we wanted to see was, how much it cost and all that sort of thing in this header, right? So what we'll do is we'll just say r.json. And so you can see here, This URL, which told us what models are available, is send us a JSON request, and it's given us some information about uh, whatever models that are available through this. Someone's asking a question. I felt a bit
Yeah,
interested.
please scroll up so that I follow along you. But you're
Sorry.
going very fast now. Yeah, could you show your code?
Okay.
The other part. Yeah, this thing. What are you doing? Header is equal to.
Yeah, just minimize that so you can see this. So yeah, so this is the request, and then maybe I'll do it this way so you can see it a bit better.
From where you get the header?
So if you look at the documentation, the API documentation, it tells you that you have to send this header in along with. So if you look here, this dash. So if you're using curl command, for example, this dash h is a header that you're sending, and so it requires this header to be sent when you're sending the request.
Okay. So in place of API proxy token, you just pass uh,
Yeah. So
token, huh?
over
API.
here I've sent my key. Okay. And usually you will have you will have your own key, which you don't have to do like how I have done, but you'll have your own key, which will be like some multiple strings and characters like this, right? So all you will do is you will send that as a variable in here.
And from where you import the request? Achha, importing request. That's
Yeah. So this request is from the documentation. This is the site for the documentation of the AI proxy. I'll paste it in the chat window as well, so you can have a look at it. So that's the Anand sir's proxy server that is providing this feature. Okay.
okay. But when I run, I get some error.
Okay. You want to share your screen so we can have a look at it?
Okay, yeah. Why not?
So I hope others are trying also, because this will be very useful to you when you're doing your GA and things of that sort. So if there are any issues, it's best to get them cleared up.
Is it visible now? Is it visible?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, yeah, yeah. It's visible now.
No.
Okay, so that's your API key. That's fine. And so what's the error? Says no. What's the error? Can you show me the error?
Yeah, error. Set object
So
is
set object has no attribute items. Oh, go up. So request dot get. That looks fine. So you're using the wrong endpoint, right? The endpoint you're using, it should be V1 models we were looking at, because that endpoint only takes post requests, but you're sending a get request.
okay. So what I change here?
So yeah, so over there you change the endpoint to say models instead of embeddings.
Okay. Here I
None,
change.
no. When you see embeddings,
Here I change
yeah,
the.
to models. Okay. Now try, run and try.
Yeah, I run it. Yeah, set object is
Oh,
not included.
go up again. Let's see what else is possibly wrong with it. Authorization. Okay. Right. So there's another mistake. So authorization, if you look at authorization, so remove the F in front of it.
Okay.
Okay, authorization is a key. So headers is a key value pair, like a dictionary. That's exactly how headers work when you're doing requests. So authorization is a key. So where you have to put keys in double quotes, but you have not enclosed authorization in double quotes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the value of a key value pair also has to be in quotes, and that's where you put your API.
Now
So
it's right.
now it is correct. Now it should work.
Oh yeah. Got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Now, one thing I would suggest is, yeah, so you got a response 200, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So anything after this, you process in a separate cell because you don't want to run the requests every time. So this is a common mistake that people do when accessing public APIs, right? They will have the requests and also debug it. Every time they do a debug, they will run the request again and again. And then eventually they get banned because they have hit the request point too many times.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, that's a good you showed us because you demonstrated something very useful, which is anything that you send in a request, they're always in the form of like key value pairs, which is headers are in the form of key value pairs, parameters are in the form of key value pairs. So always remember that you will have key value pairs. Okay, right. So, any other questions at this point?
No, no.
Anyone else? Are you guys trying out as well? Okay, can you raise your hands who all are trying? So I know that, you know, you guys are doing it along with me. Okay, okay, great. Okay, so the rest of you guys also, please try, okay? Because then you will only, when you try, you will learn some new things. So, okay, great. Okay, Jay Prakash, you can put your hand down, unless you have a question. Right. So so that's how we get models, and I think there are some GA questions related to this as well, right? GA5, I think, has some questions with regards to that. So that's the first endpoint, how you use that endpoint. The next thing, so I presume you all understand this response body, right? So this is a JSON response body, and you can see it also works as a dictionary key value pair, and inside it is a list, as you can see with this square bracket. So considering that all of you have done project, I hope you are able to parse this without much difficulty. Okay, so now what I'll show you is, now usually when working with LLMs, the post requests tend to be a little more complicated. So it'll be good idea to set everything up in such a way so that it's easy for you to work with the LLM API. Okay, so typically, if you have watched the videos, you will notice it's actually quite a bit complicated. Okay, because there is a notebook available, and it's not quite easy to understand what's going on unless you're very good at reading the code. So what I'll show you here is a very simplified version of it, so that you will be able to then build upon what you learn here today and be able to do your own processing work. Okay. So typically what happens is, so if you remember the endpoints from the documentation, let me pull that up here real quick so you can see it again. If you look on here, so these are the endpoints you will be using. So remember, this first one we used was a GET request. Okay, and so this was the endpoint for a GET request. But the other two that you will typically use will be these two: embeddings and completions. And these are the URLs you'll be using. So when you send these URLs, you won't say request.get, okay, like up here. You in fact will say request.post because you're going to do a post request. And the structure of the LLMs will do with post, because you will be sending some data to the LLM, and that's done using a post, and you will get some data back from them. So the post structure will look like something like this. Okay, you will have a post, and you'll say URL equal to some endpoint that is there in the documentation. You will send some headers. Okay, and then you will have a one extra thing, a JSON body you will send it. So this will be the structure of the request you will send when you're dealing with a proper interaction with the LLM. Okay, so this is a bit different from what you used with the GitHub API. So in the GitHub API, you were doing GET requests, right? But now you'll be actually be sending some information via this JSON body. So just remember this structure, okay, and that will help you to solve the construction of these posts for that you want to send to the API. So one of the first URLs we will be using are your typical usage of an LLM, right? Which is completions, chat completions. So we'll use that over here. Okay, and then we want the header. So again, I'll put. So this time, what I'll do is I'll put it in a variable. Okay, so it's always easily available to us. So we got the URL, we got the headers, and then comes the basic structure of the JSON body. Okay, right. So this will work just like a dictionary key value pair. So what do you typically send when you're sending some basic instructions? So if you remember, when you use an LLM, you will type in a text box, right? You'll say, I want you to solve this, or please tell me how to do this in Python or in Pandas. You'll send some instructions, right? So now we'll show you how to use an API to do it. And you might say to yourself, what's the point of using an API? We can anyway send it via the application or the browser, right? So there is one big difference. When you're using the browser, first of all, it's very hard to automate. So if you're sending in, if you want to send it large chunks of data, you know, we're talking like thousands of rows and things like that to process on, it's not easily done using the browser. That's the first thing. But the second and the more important reason is cost. When you use the browser and interact with the GPT via the browser, it is very expensive. In fact, I think like for OpenAI at the moment, it's something like $20 a month to use. Okay, and it also has some limits. Even the $20 a month subscription has some limits to it in terms of what you can send. And if you go to OpenAI's website and you look up the costs per request, and well, they don't say per request, it's actually per token. Okay, when you look up the costs per token for using the browser versus using API, it's a huge difference. Tokens are much cheaper, and that's why it's very valuable to learn how to use an API call using tokens to be able to do our process. Okay, so that's why we are learning. So that's the motivation behind it. Okay, so how do we send our little chat to GPT? So first thing you will require is a key called model, and I'll just leave it blank for now. And the next thing you need is messages. Okay, some message you're sending to it. Now this message will have a list. Okay, so I'll make the list. And what are the items in this list? So the first will be two specific items. So I'll just make the structure shape of it now so you can see it. So these two items will be there inside the list. What are these items? They are dictionaries again. Okay, and in the first item, you will send what's called a role, and you'll give it some information. I'll tell you in a moment what it is. You will send some content, and oops, okay, and then in the next dictionary, again there will be a role, oops, and then there will be some content. Okay, this is how you send a chat to GPT. Okay, now uh, let's talk about model. So in fact, I'll put this above here because we want to send it beforehand. So model, and this is where you will decide what model to use. Okay, and if you look at the instructions on the uh, documentation for Anand's server, he said use for chat completions use GPT 4.0 mini. So that's what we will do. Okay, and in fact, if you look on here, you will find it on here also. So if I do a Control F and say GPT 4.0, oops, 4.0 mini. So you can see there's GPT 4.0 mini and some date and one without a date. So he said to use this one. Okay. So this is the model we will use, GPT 4.0 mini. So GPT 4.0 mini. So that's telling his proxy, I want to use this model. Now, there may be other models you might want to use, okay? Not for this proxy, but when you're using OpenAI, for example. So OpenAI has the capability, for example, to receive images, right? So then your JSON body will perhaps have images that you're sending, or it will send some sound file. So any number of things you can send, right? So, but the models will be different than what your model you use. So some will use Picasso, or there are some different models that OpenAI has. So if you look at their documentation, you can send different. So that's the reason you have to specify what model you're using. And since we're doing chat completions, we're using GPT 4 only. So I'll change this now to say model. Okay, so our model is sorted. Now, what's this role and content? So if you think about it, when you're interacting with GPT, there are two roles in that application. Can anyone tell me what the two roles are of that application?
User and system.
So user and system. Okay. Why do you say that? What's the reason you say user and system?
If I use any app of the site, there will be two things. One will be user and one will be server.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? So the GPT application has two uh, two roles effectively, right? One is the GPT itself, which is the server, and one is you are the other agent, right, who is using that application. So that's what this messages is doing. It's saying there will be um, the role of the system will be here, and then the other one is the user. Okay. Now you may say, okay, what content do we put here? So this is where I'll call this instruction. Okay. I'm just making up these variables, okay, so that it's easy for you to understand what's going on. Instruction. So instruction is what you tell the GPT to do. So you remember we were doing sentiment analysis earlier with text block, right? So we could do the same here. We can give it some instruction and say, so this is the part where you communicate with GPT, right? So it's the same sort of idea. So okay, so we can say okay. So I've said okay, identify the sentiment of the sentence. Only choose positive, negative with a score ranging from -1 to 1. So that's the instruction I've given it. And once you give this instruction, you can keep on calling this API to process various kinds of sentences. You do this only once. You send the instruction, and then it can process a whole bunch of data. So that's what we do here. Call this instruction. And now the question is, what is the content? So I'll call this the data we are sending it. Okay. And we can put our sentence, right? We tried some sentences earlier, right? So shall we try that? So the first sentence was, I like football, right? Who was that? Anu, I think, or someone, right? Who was it that suggested it?
Yes, it was
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we tried it in text block, right? And the result was not, wouldn't light the world on fire, right? It was a very meh response. Oh, yeah, we need to initialize these variables. Okay, so let's see what GPT thinks about it. Okay, GPT 4 mini. I like football, and I given the instruction: identify the sentiment of the sentence, choose positive, negative with the score ranging from -1 to 1. So we have to give it some very explicit instruction. Otherwise, it it won't know what to do with it, right? And we'll pass this data here. So this sentence is being passed in here. So the instruction and the data. So now the next thing we do is we'll run that request. So if I go back up here, just copy paste this down here. And now, because we have used variables, it's fairly straightforward, and we can keep reusing them without any issues. Oops. Can't type today. Okay. And so it's JSON data. Okay. And of course, we want to save the response somewhere. So we'll say r equal to not defined. Oh, right. Sorry. Right. Now let's try. Okay, something's happening. Let's see. Okay, that's good. It means our request was good. And now let's see what actually came back. Moment of truth. So we get a whole bunch of things. Of course, it will send back. And if you look at the very bottom, it will say, okay, this is the cost of the tokens. So I've sent so far 9 tokens, 9 requests using this token key that has been given to me. This is how much it cost. This is always in dollars, okay? So it costs this one request. Okay, so before we do that, let's see how many tokens. 41 tokens was the prompt. So this prompt that we sent, this was 41 tokens. But if you notice, there are no 41 words in here, right? So just keep that in mind. This has what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe at most 20 words. If even that, I don't even think it's 20 words. But it says it was 41 tokens. And completion token 6, total tokens 47. So it cost you total of 47 tokens to run this request. And then there are some other bits and pieces of information. So we'll address this a bit later. Then of course the other things are the cost. So 47 tokens cost us 1/1000th of a dollar. Okay, that's very cheap actually if you really think about it. Okay. And the important thing is what was the result, right? So let's see what was the result. So if you remember, we sent it a role, right, of user. And if we look what its response was, you can see the content here. Okay, it says positive 0.8. Now that's good, right? That's interesting. I like football is a fairly positive statement. I think you would agree. And that's exactly what GPT said. So you can see already, this is already a bit more realistic than text blob, right? Of course, it costs money and you have to send a request, and there are all these other caveats. Yes, Indal, go ahead.
Yes, sir. When I run the code, then I got 400 error response 400.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. You can share your screen. I'm glad you're trying it out with me so that we can identify any issues early on.
Mhm. Hold on.
So I have one question.
Yes, go ahead, Jayaprakash.
So the 0.8, is that a polarity score or subjectivity score? What is the 0.8 in this?
So it is just something that it gave based on our prompt. We
Okay.
said choose positive or negative,
Mhm.
and we gave it a range. If you remember our prompt, so it's totally
Okay, okay.
dependent on our prompt. We could have said give me a score ranging from 0 to 10.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's completely dependent on our prompt. In other words, it's not mathematical like the text blob was.
Okay. So,
It will.
so it means that with 0.8% accuracy, it's positive. Or how should I interpret that thing? That score.
Uh, it's dependent on your prompt, right? So in our prompt, what we did was we said only choose positive, negative as the response, and
Okay.
we said give a score from -1 to 1. So it has given a score from
Mhm.
-1 to 1. So 0.8, and it said that was positive. So GPT thinks it's a positive sentence with a score of
Mhm.
0.8.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see what the issue here is. What's your error?
Yeah, for 400.
Okay, just scroll up. Scroll up. Okay. Uh, okay, so have you tried the models earlier, and did your key work?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, okay, so that time it worked. Okay, that's fine, because at least we know then that the key works, and it doesn't cost any money when you check for models. So because it's just a GET request. Okay, then let's see, headers, authorization, error. Okay, then we got model. So you put the correct model in there.
Yeah,
GPT 4o mini, that looks right. And then messages, role system,
this is
role
this.
user. Okay. And looks okay to me. I'm wondering, okay, can we look at the content of the response, JSON response itself? No, no. If you go, okay, you didn't put it in a variable, right? The response. So
Um, which response
if
I
you
put it now? Result is equal to.
no, that is in the get request, but the next one, the next request you sent. See, we can't examine it unless it's in a variable, right? So put that requests in a variable. R equal to requests dot post.
Okay, okay, okay. It is here.
Because otherwise we can't examine what the problem is. Yeah,
Now,
you have to put all, that. You can just use that cell below, right? Instead of typing it separately.
yeah,
Yeah. So in front of
I
request dot
have.
post,
Which okay? You
you
are
know.
saying this, putting this thing
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
variable.
Yes, so that we get the response in a variable. Yeah. So run it
Okay.
one more time. Okay, so now you open up a new code cell at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, do r dot json and see what is sent back. Okay, so now you'll see the required parameter messages missing. Oh, go up. Spelling mistake. You put
Yeah.
massages.
Okay. Okay.
So you see why it's important to keep it separate, right? In the sense that so that you can examine the content later.
No.
So now it should work. Now you
Yeah.
got it one. Now examine the body. Yeah, something came, right? So let's see. Okay. So your tokens are working. So your prompt, if you look at your prompt, what is your prompt?
Yeah. Give me a
Give me
sentiment one.
sentiment. You choose range of -1 to 1. So let's see what its result was.
Result was this.
No. If you look,
It's point eight
message,
content.
content. Yeah, there. Message. If you look at content, it says point 0.8. So your prompt was different from mine. So it's just giving you a number, 0.8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Anyone else has any questions so far? Okay. Okay. So this is how you construct a chat completion to GPT. Um, this is how the JSON body is structured. So first of all, there are three elements to it: the endpoint, the headers with the authorization, and some JSON body. And the JSON body must have two keys called model and messages. And you have to send it a model. And in messages, there are two items in a list. And the first item is the instructions that you send to the system. And that will have two keys, role and content, and what it gets back, role as user and content. Okay. So this is how you send a basic request. Okay. Now, once now so far that's okay. It's very simple and straightforward. But what if you want to do something far more advanced, right? So this is where now that you've understood this, I can show you what they do in um, the video. Okay, so there's a notebook available on the week 5 content, and there you can see they've done the same thing. They've taken the API key, they have put in a request, and then they run some they've sorted it, of course, over here to see the models and all that sort of thing they've done. um, and then they've taken a data set of movie reviews. Okay, and you can see, okay, these are the movie reviews, these are the sentiments and all that are there in there already. And then the idea is, okay, we want to use an LLM to identify the sentiment of a movie. And then you can see they've given the same structure what I've shown you earlier, except this is a little, it's not so simple to understand this. So that's why I showed you how to construct it earlier. But it's exactly the same thing. Okay, nothing has changed here. There's model, there's messages, there's role, there's the GPT prompt, there is the content that's being sent. Uh, and this is for a single movie they sent. Okay, so they sent a review and they put it in a function, and they've checked out for a single movie. Okay, and then what they did is, now this is where you can, because once you've constructed this function, now unlike the uh, GPT that you use in the browser, you can now reuse this over and over again. And that's where the power of using APIs really comes in. So they took the pandas data frame, they took this column, sentiment LLM, right, which is, okay, they made a new column rather, and they have taken the review column, they've taken the review column, and they've applied a transformation. If you've been in my previous sessions, you will know that this is a function, right? So they've taken the review column, applied a transformation. What is the transformation? It's this function, get sentiment. And that runs this function. So it takes this function and it hits the API with that review and it gets the result. Whatever result it gets, it sticks it out into another column called sentiment LLM, and these are the results from it. And you can see here. So this was initially, I don't know how this was computed. It could have been text blob or something, but you can see this is the sentiment from the LLM. And you can see why this approach, API approach, is very powerful compared to just using GPT through the browser. Okay, so that's what that was. So the next part of it is, let's see. Yeah, okay. You can do what's called training an LLM as well. Okay. At the moment, what we do is there is no training involved. You just send it a prompt, you send it a sentence, and it produces some response to it, negative, positive. There's no training. It just does its best guess, as it were, okay, of what would be appropriate. But you can also ask the LLM to uh, so you can train the LLM how, or tweak it rather to how you want it to respond. So that's called training it, right? So there are three types of prompting. Okay, one is zero shot training, which is what we did initially, no training involved. Second is one shot training, and then the third is multi shot training. So here they have provided an example. Again, the same thing, same function, but there is one big difference. So before, if you remember, there were only two list items. Okay, one was system, and then the other one was user. Okay, but now there are two more items that are here. Okay, watch this carefully. Two more items are there in messages. So we are saying, okay, system is the same thing. We want you to identify. So it's given some prompt, okay? And then uh, this next bit is the training bit. Okay, it says user content. Okay, is the training bit, and we're saying uh, whatever he wants to say about it is said over there. And then there is the assistant. So these are the keys: system, users, assistant, and user. So these are the keys. And this last one is your data, just like we did in the previous one. And if you look here, we are asking it to send back some data based on this training that we're doing. And we are saying, okay, we want you to give response. This time when we want to give the response, you break it down into these sort of categories. And we send this off. And so that's what the LLM does. It produces a response. If you look here, it gets the sentiment of the review, and then it breaks it down into acting, storyline, direction, and that's what it does. So this is called aspect-based sentiment, meaning we do some sort of training on them by giving them something to use when they're uh, making a decision. So that's about aspect-based training. I know it's a little bit complicated to understand at first, but if you give it a few tries, right, and try different things, experiment. That's why we have given you tokens, right? Play around with these things that are available and try different things and see what results you get out of it. And so that's about aspect-based training. I mean, you might still have questions about this, but anything you want to ask at this point?
No, I'm not trying actually. So I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, but you understood what's happening, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
You see this keyword assistant, right?
Yes,
Basically, what we are saying is we want you to break it down into these things, and we're telling how we might do that. You're basically chatting with the LLM and saying, look, we want you to do it this way. Right? So
correct.
that's what it talks about here, right? It says, let's
Yeah,
teach the LLM to return the quality of the acting, storyline, and direction. And so then it trains on what you have given it. And then notice, once you do the training, you're sending any number of movies to it, the whole list of movies, but it's doing all the analysis based on this training you have given to it prior in the prior instructions over here. Okay, so I hope that's clear to you guys. Right. Now the next thing is a very important topic. It's called function calling. Okay. Now you may think, what is this function calling? I mean, we are able to interact with the LMA, able to tell it to do whatever you want. So what's the big deal about this? And imagine you've given the LLM some unstructured data. Okay. And one example could be you could have a whole bunch of addresses, for example. Okay. So I'll copy paste some addresses here. Okay. So here are some addresses. You've given it some sort of data like this. The place is called White House, and you're given some address like this. Okay, it's unstructured. Why is it unstructured or semi-structured, rather, to be very accurate? It's semi-structured because this contains several other pieces of information. It contains a city, it contains a street, it contains a house number. So parsing through this is not very easy. Right? What if you wanted to get the postcodes and the state name and the city name out of these kind of information, right? So if you go the traditional programming way, this is a very challenging task. Okay, it's takes a lot of effort. So how can we use LLMs to deal with it? So the first thing I want you to know or learn is something called a JSON schema. Okay, so JSON schemas are very important in order to be able to extract or structure information in a very precise manner. So when you send a prompt to an LLM and you want data to come back to you in a very neat and structured way that you can actually do something useful with it, you have to be able to tell the LLM, hey, I've got all this semi-structured or unstructured data, but now I want you to put it into some specific fields that I can then use and put it in a pandas data frame or whatever it is that I need to do with it. So we have to understand for that how a JSON schema works. Okay. And for that, there is some very good documentation, and I recommend you to uh, go through it. Okay. So, I think it's this one. Okay, well, I had a link to it somewhere. When I find it, I'll either put it on discourse or send it to you guys. It was a very useful. Um, so if I can find it. Okay, not sure where. Maybe next session I'll share it with you guys. But look up JSON specifications, okay? Because it will help you to construct good quality JSONs that will help you with regards to um, structuring data out of getting structured data out of unstructured data through GPT. Okay? So normally a JSON schema, as we call it, I'm just calling this schema, but it's basically a JSON. Comprises of maybe three specific things. Okay, this is with regards to when you want data to come to you in a sort of clean way. So first of all, there is always a type, okay, in a JSON schema. So when you say type, it can be of anything. It can be an object, or it can be a string, or it can be a number, or it can be an array. So there are various specific things it can be. And this is why I wanted to show you the documentation, which is very, very good to look at, because it tells you what types are valid types for a proper JSON schema. Okay. So for our purposes, we will look at a basic schema. Okay. So there'll be a type, and we'll call it object in this case. And the second thing is, when you give it a type, you have to also tell what the properties of this type are, right? So because it's an object, it will have some properties. So I'll just put this as a dictionary key value pair. And the third thing you require in a schema is you want this, you may have some things that are required. Okay. Because in a schema, you may have many different types of items in your schema, right? So if you think about this, right, we want to get structured data out of this. We may, for example, have an object that deals with the details about the state. We may have an object that deals with the pin code. We may have an object that deals with um, the state name, city name, any number of things, right? So, but not all these will have every bit of information that we're looking for. So if you look at this one, this does not have a pin code, right? If you look at this one, this doesn't have a pin code. So if it doesn't have that information, then those might be optional, right? Maybe they're not required. So it's this key that we use, required key, will help us to tell GPT, hey, this is the schema, but these fields are required in this schema. And it's not just GPT, it's any application that you're building with a proper JSON schema. Okay. These are some sort of industry conventions or standards that they use. So these are the three things. First of all, you tell what type is there and what properties are there. Okay. Then what could be inside properties? There could be other. So we said this is an object, right? So an object comprises of other items, right? So we can call this item one. And then we have to describe what item one is, right? So again, we'll have to put type. I hope you can see this, the flow of this construction. So I might say, okay, this object contains uh, item one. Item one is of type string. So that could be something that's in our properties of this object. Okay. And then, okay, there might be item two. And we can say, okay, we have to now describe this second item in the JSON schema, right? So I'll say, okay, this will be of type number. Yeah, that's possible. Okay. Then I might say, okay, the third item may be called categories or something, right? These are just labels, right? These are labels of items inside your object, because that is the first thing we described. We said the first thing in our JSON is an object. What are the properties of this object? It has three other items inside it, right? And these are the labels of those items: item one, item two, categories. Okay. Now we have to explain what this categories is. So categories, of course, there could be many variables in a category, right? In other words, it's maybe an array of some sort, you know, say type, then array. Okay, that's great. Now, if it's an array, now I have to tell what kind of array it is, right? So I'll have to describe those items as well. And I'll say the array is of type string. So this is how you construct a JSON, okay, a JSON specification, in other words, so that it can be used in an application. So this is the idea behind it, right? And now we will put the required fields. We'll say, okay, I only want, say, item 1 should be there. Item 2 can be optional. So I'll say, but it must have a category. So these are the only 2 required parts of your JSON, I could say. So this is typically how you construct it. So I hope you can see it, how it has formed, right? So if it was in Python, we would just say, class, and then we would give it some name, address, and then we would have some variables in there, right? We would say city and things of that sort, right? We put some variables in there, state. So that's effectively what we're doing here, but in JSON form. We're saying this is an object. It has, the object has these properties. The properties is, it has these 3 things called item 1, item 2, item 3, or rather categories. And then then we have to describe these things as well. Because remember, JSON doesn't know anything about, it's language agnostic, right? It can be for any language, C, Pascal, whatever it is, right? So whatever, it doesn't know what's actually in it. So that's why you have to describe everything. Whereas when Python interprets this, it already has a set of rules and it knows what to do with whenever you're describing or making things in Python. Okay. Okay, so why did I take all this time to describe how to do this? It's because this is what will help us to tell GPT how to give us structured information out in the form of a JSON. That's why we had to understand how this works. So that's why I went through that. Now, what I'll do is we will use the schema that they've used in one of the lectures, because it's of course complicated to construct this. Okay, you just seen how long it's taken for me to construct a schema like this, but the reason I explained it is so that you understand what's happening. So it's not a black box, right? So using this approach, you can construct as complicated a schema as you want. So I've got a ready-made schema for the address that we wanted to deal with. So you can see here. No, sorry, this is not it. This is the model itself. Where is the schema? It's over here. Okay. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. So this is a more complicated schema. Okay. But the idea is exactly the same. Nothing has changed. Okay. It's exactly this construction, but it's applied to our issue with dealing with the fact that we want to parse this information into some structured format. Before I continue, did you all understand exactly what I was talking about here? Anyone has any question? Because if you don't understand this, it's going to be difficult to understand the next bit.
Yes, understood.
Okay, it's clear, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. What about the rest of you all? No response
Yeah,
from.
yeah, yeah. It's clear.
Okay. How's, sorry, Jay Prakash? Yes.
No, sir, you can go ahead, sir.
Okay. Kaustav, Prajulit, it's all good. Vishnu. Vijit?
So as per my understanding, the schema is like blueprint. We want our output data to be like this.
Yes, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a blueprint. That's a good word. So that's what a schema does, and JSON helps us to specify it for the application. So that's why it's very important to understand. I still urge you to go through the documentation. There's a very good bit of documentation on JSON uh, that's available officially, which breaks down these things into some neat little um, explanation about these things, and it tells you about the types and what are the valid types and how do you define them and all that sort of thing. So if you have some time, you can go through that and help you construct better and more stronger schemas. Okay. So now this is the same thing, but dealing with the address. So you can see here. Remember what I told you? There's a type. So there's a type. There's a properties. So type is object. What's the properties of this object? You can see that there. And if you go to the very bottom, you can see, okay, required. So let's see what this one, two, three, yeah. So there are three items inside this properties. It's called state, country, and that also has its own required field, and zip. So those are the three items. Remember these items over here we were talking about? So those are the three items inside this object. And then we have to describe these three items, right? Because the application doesn't know what these mean. So that's what we're doing. We're describing what state is. What is state? We're saying, okay, it's also a kind of object. And this is just giving some information to us, okay, for us, the users. Forward. So this is to help us understand what's going on. So there's a description, but remember, this is the important bit. This object has properties. This object, the main object on the outside, has properties. This object, which is called state, has properties. And then we describe the properties of this state object. It has a name apparently. Okay, that's fine. And then what is name? Name is of type string. And then again, this is for our own understanding. Okay, this is just for documentation. Then state also has, apart from name, it has code, and it's of type string, and then something to help us understand. And we say this state object, both name and code are required. That's what we are saying here. The next item inside our main schema is called country. It's also some sort of object. Okay. This is just for our benefit. What are the properties of this object? It has name and code. Okay. Name is of type string. This is just for our documentation. Code is of type string. This is also for our understanding, documentation. And we are saying that country also, both these fields are required, name and code. Okay, very good. And the third item was zip. You're saying this is an object. This is the for our own documentation. What are the properties of zip? We say there is code. Code is of type string. And we are saying that's also required. And we're saying all three of these are also required in our from our main schema. Now you see how easy that was to understand this, because we understood this basic construction first. Right? All of you are with me now?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do some magic now. Magic. Okay, actually we don't need this schema, we need this schema. Okay. Right. So let's do a sanity check, as I call it. So addresses. Okay, let's take the second address and see what it is. Right. Okay. So what we really need is we need this, right? We need the LLM to pass this for us into this schema. Okay. The schema is state. We want it to extract the state, the country and the zip. And if you look carefully, there is no country, there is a zip. And so this is the beauty of LLMs, right? If you had to programmatically solve these issues, right, it's a lot of work. And this is just a toy example, right? Let's see how good an LLM can be. We have given it the schema. So whether it finds the country or not, doesn't matter, as long as it gives us all the data in a structured format, right? Because there can be missing information, that's no issue. So let's go back to our initial model that we constructed, right? Where was it? Yeah, this one, right? So is that down here? Okay. Now this time it's going to be a little more complicated. Okay. This was our basic typing in GPT, sending a prompt. It gives us a response, and we're all happy with it. But now we're going to do some real adult stuff, right? Some grown-up stuff. So this model will change a little bit. So we'll still have the same thing. We'll have a model. Okay, that's good. But now we're going to do something additional. Okay, we want the response to be in a very specific format. Okay, we don't want it to chat back to us. We want it to do some grown-up work. Okay. So you need this key. This is the extra key you need. Response format. Okay, and then you have to tell it, okay, how we want the response back. And there we say we want it back as a JSON object. All right. Okay. Now the next job is we have to give it some tools. Okay. And this what we're doing right now is called function calling. Okay, because we're going to give LLM a function, right? Something it has to do. So how does it achieve this function? We can give it various tools. Okay. In this case, we have only one tool for the moment. So we will only be putting one tool in here. But this keyword is important. We have to use the word tools because there can be more than one tool. But whether there's one tool or more than one tool, it has to be given in a list. So just remember that. Okay. So there are some tools. And then we will say type. What type is this? A function. This is one of the tools. And then we have to describe this function. So this is like in Python we give, or rather in Java we give function definitions, right? So it's something similar to that. You're defining the function basically. So the function has some name, and we'll call it extract address. Okay. So that's the name of the function. And how does this function work? This is the beautiful part. You give it the schema. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. So, what have we learned so far? So far, model remains the same. We have told it we want it back in a specific format. We have told in order to accomplish the task, there is some tools we will give it. In this case, there is only one tool. That tool is of type function. And the function definition is, the function name itself is called extract address. And we have told it that we want the information back in the form of this schema. Okay, we have given it the schema as well. Okay, so far that's good. Now the next thing is, when you give a whole bunch of tools to it, you will also have to give a tool choice. Okay, I know it sounds redundant that there is a tool choice, but in this case there's only one tool, right? So why does it need? But that's because this is the specification of OpenAI. Okay, this is what they have specified you have to do. So that's why we have to follow their method of doing it. So we say, okay, tool choice. Oh, by the way, there's a comma here, I forgot. Okay. So tool choice, and we'll say type, function. And here we could give any type of function when executing something, right? And of course, remember, these things can be parameterized, okay? I've not parameterized them here, but these can be parameterized. So normally when this is called, different functions may work on different, you can make this as complicated as you wanted, right? So typically tool choices and all would be parameterized, but we have only one function here, so we're not going to do that. So here is where you tell the function name. So I hope you. All right, actually. Choice. Oh, sorry. Function. Okay. So in tool choice, we give it the function name. Okay. So this is like your function definition. This is where you're saying use this function. You've defined it here and you're saying use this function. That's your tool choice. Okay. So is it clear so far? Any questions?
Yes.
Yes,
No.
sir.
No
No, sir.
question.
Okay. So now that we have done that, finally we can get down to uh, giving it the prompt, the part that is that we like to do, right? Telling it what to do and all that sort of thing. So here we can give it some new instruction. Oops. Instruction. And we'll say get address as JSON via. Now watch this. I'm giving it the function name. Okay. So we all know that GPT can hallucinate, right? So that's why we are making it explicit that if it's unsure, don't make up things. Okay. So it's a little bit like a naughty intern or something, right? So we've given them some work and then they'll just make up stuff to see that they're doing, to show they're doing good work or something, right? So instruction is there. And then the last bit is we have to give it some data, right? So let's try with, yeah, let's try it with this one. Okay, it looks good so far, right? So this is the same as before. We're given some instruction and we're given it some data. Okay. But the only new thing is we have told we want the response back as this JSON, as a JSON object. How it should achieve that is we have told it, okay, the name of the function is called extract address. This is the schema for it. And that's the function definition. And then in tool choice, we're saying use this tool. And now we go to the moment of truth. Post. So this time it's a post request, like with our sentiment. Yeah. No, I haven't. Okay. And I hope headers and URLs are all correct. I think we'll find out. Okay. So let's run this. See what happens. It's taking some time. Okay. Dun dun dun. Let's see. Hey. Okay. 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 This is good. This is good. Let's see. Let's see. So it's seems to have done something. You can see it's run the function called extract address, and something has happened here. Okay, okay. In fact, let me, instead of doing it that way, choices. And inside choices, we've got to message. Oops.
You have to mention the index. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Inside message, we've got tool calls. And then that's also a list. And tool calls. We've got function, I think it is. Is it? Yeah. Well, we'll just do it one at a time. Okay, yeah, function. And then we've got arguments. And then we've got I wonder if you can JSONify this whole thing. JSON. Oh. Okay, never mind. I thought that would have prettified it. Okay, anyway, the important bit is if you remember our schema, there was a state, there was country, and there was zip. You remember that? And we said state comprised of name, code, and zip comprised of code, right? Those were the things. If you looked at our schema, where is it? Up here, right? So name, code, code. And this is the beautiful thing now. I know it seemed like we did a lot of work, but actually we did, okay? We did hardly anything. And it gave us from unstructured data, right? It gave us out a beautiful piece of uh, structured data. It extracted the city, or rather the state, because for those of you who are not aware, there is the state of New York, which has the city of New York as well. So you have the state, you have the code of the state, it's got the country, and it's got the zip. Yeah, and it's done it. It's done it. And now we can send it thousands of addresses, and it'll give you from unstructured data. It'll give you extract data exactly out in this form for you using the API calls, and it'll do it super cheaply. How much did this cost us? So this cost us 6/10,000th of a dollar. 6/10,000th of a dollar. That's how much it cost us to do this extraction. I mean, I don't know if you're impressed with that or not, but that's a small example of what can be achieved by using LLMs properly, using the API. Okay. Right. Any questions so far? Was that clear to follow? Was it? I hope it's made it as clear as possible. I know it can be a slightly complex topic, so that's why I'm going very slowly. Have you guys understood how we achieved this?
Yes.
Okay. Any
So here
questions?
we mentioned, sorry.
Yeah. Any questions so far?
So I want to know that type is equal to type function. This is a keyword or we can mention anything.
Here,
Tool
these things,
choice,
right?
tool choice and tools.
Yeah. So this is required. This is part of the specification that they have given us. So
But
if
inside that we can mention like type value. We can mention type value not equal to function something other.
the answer is I don't know because we'd have to look at the OpenAI documentation on that. So if I go, so I'll tell you where to find it. If you go OpenAI, oops, OpenAI API, this one. Okay, so this is their documentation. Okay, and they will tell you exactly how to create the API calls to use them. Okay, just like GitHub had some documentation, right? You'd have to go through the documentation. I myself are not fully aware of all the capabilities and how it's achieved, but you can see, remember I was telling you these are the keys that are required. So you can see them here, right? And it tells you, you can do chat completion, image generations. You can use it for all sorts of things, and they explain how to do each one of those. So we were doing function calling, right? Okay, maybe you have to use the full API reference for that. But so for example, if you wanted to do image generation, so it uses the DALI um, model, and then it tells you, okay, this is how you construct it, this is what you do, and this is how you send the information to it, and then how you prompt it, and then it creates stuff for you, right? Um, so you'd have to look at the documentation for function calling. I think if you type in here, function calling, so as soon as I said function calling, it came up. So they will explain to you how function calling works, and then they will tell you all the things that are required in order to get it to work exactly the way that's expected. You'd have to go through the documentation, okay? Because there's quite a lot of it. I know that didn't totally answer your question, but I've hopefully given you a place you can explore to get there. Because even I'm not an expert, so I can't guide you fully on it. I can only teach you the basics.
Yeah, it's okay. I will try by my own.
Okay, sure. But you understood this so far, right? What we have done today.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is how I've learned it. I've understood it this way, and so it works, and so that's why I've shared with you how it's achieved. Okay. Any other questions?
Sir, I have one more thing.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So there is a link provided in September 2024 TDS API key for LM's mail ID. Sorry, in the
Okay.
API. That
Yeah.
module by large language modules example. That link is not working for me. Is this the case for everyone or only for me? I'm not sure.
Uh,
I will put the link in the chat. Please check.
yeah. So I
Please,
think
please copy and paste this link to other new tab, then it will work. If you will click, it will not work.
So I have
For
tagged
me
that link
also,
also.
when I click it, it not work. But when I copy and paste, then it work.
I have tried both the ways, but it was not working. So
I think the address there for that is actually it's from the GitHub repo itself of the course. I think.
okay.
Let me just look at the GitHub resource here once.
What is this URL for?
I think it's from the email where they
Yeah, just in the email.
It says you can try out examples in,
Yes.
but the thing is, I think it's talking about these examples only, this GitHub stuff. Because if you look down here, by the way, the links for all the other things are here, okay? So
Okay.
you can see the API reference and things of that sort. There's an OpenAI playground where you can try things out. So this node, so this is the link I was wanting to show you earlier. So this site is really good. So if you go, I think specification, yeah. So here, no, specification or docs. Let's try docs. Overview maybe. Getting started. Creating a first schema. Yeah. So this documentation is really good. Okay, which is shown over here. JSON schema, and they explain everything. How you create a schema, what's valid, what's not valid. Talks about the various types that you can use, and properties. So remember, I was telling you about objects and properties, and it's quite useful to at least have a read through. You don't have to memorize all this. We're not going to expect you to know this for ROE or even for the end term, but just be familiar with some of these things. Okay. So here you can see what I was talking about. The types, properties, descriptions, and it gives you some examples, real world examples of how you might use it. Okay. Function calling. Okay, it points to the same thing that I was showing you earlier. Let's look at the Jupyter notebook. Okay, this is the kind of the example we were working on. Yeah. 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 Okay. Someone had a question, I think. Did someone raise their hand? Raunak. Yes, go ahead, Raunak.
So my question regarding LLM token given by mail.
Yes, yeah.
Sir, this site can give error after clicking.
You're talking about. Let me show you. Is it this you're talking about? This one or this one?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. After clicking air proxy,
So
they
this what you can do
give
is
error.
you just copy the link address and then just
Yes, sir.
paste it in here. Oops. Okay, actually, let me do it this way. Yeah. If you do this, it'll work.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, you can give it a try and see.
Probably the second link you can try.
Yeah. The second link doesn't work for some reason.
Okay.
So, but I think it's just referring to, see, it's module 5, it says, right? So it's
Okay.
most likely the GitHub that you have access from your port.
Okay. Got it.
But I'll check with Anand about that.
Sure.
Right. So things that are left to cover are, let me just quickly look here. So embeddings I have to do. We can do that next session because there's a little bit of explanation required for that. And the other thing was augmented retrieval, augmented generation is the other thing that we have to cover. So yeah, topic modeling and retrieval augmented generation. Those two things we'll cover next session. I have to unfortunately end this session now. Hope this session has been useful to you guys and you've learned something from it. And we're just beginning to unlock the amazing power of LLMs, okay, which you don't see through GPT. So it will hopefully help you to use it for other things as well, whether you're generating synthetic sounds or images or creating websites or any number of amazing things that you will come up with. This is just your how do you say it? We're teaching you the language. It's up to you to construct Shakespeare out of it, right? And I'm also on this learning phase myself. So in that sense, I'm just same as you guys. Okay, it's all new to me as well, and we are all on this learning journey together. Okay, guys. If there are no more like questions about the things we talked about today, or if you have a question that I can answer briefly, you can ask me now. If not, then we'll see you next class. Okay. Right. So I'll stop the recording now.